So I wanted to take a minute of my time to pretty much just go over a fight that I think has been a little bit overlooked by and large, with a couple of fighters essentially that have been kind of overlooked. One in particular, this being a fight that's going to be happening on Friday, September 9th, between the IBF World Super Lightweight Champion, the 140-pound champion for the IBF, Eduard Troyanovsky, versus Keita Obara. This is a fight that's going to be taking place in Moscow, Russia. Of course, Troyanovsky being from Russia, Keita Obara being from Japan. And I mean, this is actually a pretty interesting matchup between two pretty big punchers. Troyanovsky has a record of 24-0 with 21 knockouts, and Keita Obara has a record of 16-1-1 with 15 knockouts. So you pretty much have in total about an 85% knockout ratio between these two guys in terms of the fights that they've actually won. Um, Obata's one loss actually came in his pro debut. After that, he pretty much has straight wins outside of the draw. It was a majority draw that actually took place on a PBC card in November of last year against Walter Castillo, which I believe was one fight removed, or two fights removed rather, from when Castillo actually fought against Amir Imam. That being, if I remember correctly, the fight right before Imam wound up losing the big upset to Adrian Granados. But Castillo had given Imam a pretty good fight. He gave, I'd say, Keita Obara about an equally difficult fight in that I thought Obara won the fight clearly. Most people thought Obara won the fight clearly, but it wound up coming out as majority draw. You know, it was one of the fights that a lot of people really calling a robbery. At least those that really saw it. The fight, as a matter of fact, I'll link it in the description. I'll link a couple of these fights in the description for both of these guys, so you guys can check out some of their fights leading up to this fight. Because I actually think this is going to be a really interesting clash of styles, and it's for a world title. You know, a lot of people made a lot of noise about Terence Crawford versus Victor Postol. You know, of course, those being basically the two top names in the division, as well as like essentially the number one and number two fighters fighting against each other at 140 pounds. But this fight between Troyanovsky and Obara, I think, is not really one to be overlooked. I mean, Troyanovsky won this title really well against Cesar Cuenca. Of course, some of you may remember Cesar Cuenca as being a fighter from Argentina who had gone 48-0 leading into his first fight with Troyanovsky, which Troyanovsky wound up winning by TKO in the 6th round when Cuenca essentially quit. They wound up rematching back in April of this year, and Troyanovsky beat him up again, made him quit again, and this time it was in the 7th round as opposed to the 6th. But I mean, Troyanovsky did the damn thing, and it was against a guy that I think pretty much everybody that saw Cuenca fight against Ike Yang, which was on, it was either a Manny Pacquiao or a Zhou Shiming undercard over in Macau, China, where Cuenca defeated Ike Yang. But I mean, he had looked really impressive just based off of the eye test, based off of that fight. But against Troyanovsky, he really couldn't do much of anything. He was barely getting anything done, especially in that second fight. That second fight was pretty much all Troyanovsky. But I mean, these are two interesting fighters. Troyanovsky's style, I'd say, is almost like it's kind of like the way Golovkin fights when Golovkin has his high guard up. Not so much when Golovkin has his hands down. He's not quite as smooth or as slick as Golovkin. But when he has his hands up, he throws punches in a pretty similar way, similar stature in terms of the angles that he comes at you at. He's a little bit on the shorter side. I mean, of course, compared to Golovkin anyway. 5'8". Although, in terms of frame size, I guess that's kind of comparable because of the fact that Golovkin, of course, is fighting at a higher weight. So it would only seem natural that a guy that's similar in stature is basically kind of like a shrunk down version of the same style. Keita Obara, on the other hand, actually, I'd say his style kind of resembles a little bit of what Bebut Shumanov does. He looks almost like a little bit robotic with his upper body, but he actually has a really fluid movement with his feet. He's pretty quick on his feet. He'll do a little bit of shoulder rolling here and there, but it doesn't necessarily look as smooth as you'd like. But at the same time, I think the fact that he's so herky-jerky with it at times, like it's almost like he's robotic, but not robotic at the same time, if that makes any sense. He's really herky-jerky. He has this kind of improvisational style to him, but it's almost like in kind of a robotic fashion at the same time. So it's not necessarily the easiest thing to predict. He's not a guy that's necessarily going to be throwing the same types of punches over and over again. He'll be throwing jabs here and there, then he'll all of a sudden throw an uppercut or a lead left hook, something like that. I guess one flaw you could say for him though is he keeps his chin a little bit too high in the air, as he's trying to get leverage on his punches. Whereas I'd say that Troyanovsky tucks his chin a little bit better. He looks a little bit smoother overall with it. But even still, like I think he doesn't necessarily move his torso as much as you'd like to see for a guy that's a world champion. But all that said, these are essentially two arguable top 5, but definitely top 10 fighters at 140 pounds that are going to be squaring off. And I think it's a really interesting fight. Like I said, they're both big punchers. Keita Obara, the main guy that went the distance with him, was, like I said, Walter Castillo, a guy that went the distance with Amir Imam, too. A guy that was able to take flush shots from both. They both actually staggered him a little bit, but they weren't able to finish him. So, that's not necessarily a slight on Obara in terms of the fact that, the one really tough test, like well-tested chin opponent that he fought actually went the distance with him. And then Troyanovsky, of course, he's managed to prove his own power, his own powerful chops at the top level. By and large, his last several fights have been against pretty high level of opposition, and he's running on a pretty solid knockout streak. Matter of fact, it's looking like he's knocked out everybody he's fought over the past 3 or 4 years. So, I think this is just a solid fight. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention Keita Obara's height. Keita Obara is 5'10.5", so he has a little bit of a height advantage, and in terms of wingspan, he has a 3.5-inch reach advantage too. But of course, that's wingspan, not necessarily armpit to the end of the fist. Could be a little bit different when they get into the ring, but presumably Obara is taller and has a longer reach than does Troyanovsky. So it'd be kind of interesting to see how this fight turns out. I think it's a pretty well matched fight. And I think it could potentially be, a bit of a sleeper hit, potential fight of the year sleeper hit between these two guys. I'm going to try and find out exactly what channel is going to be broadcasting this so that I could, possibly find some sort of a stream. If not, I'll just try to find a video once it gets uploaded to the internet after the fact. Of course, that tends to be the easiest way to find these fights. These lesser known fights anyway. And yeah, I'm looking it up. I haven't found anything yet, but I'm sure I'll find something. I'm not sure if it's going to be broadcast in Japan because Obara isn't, from what I understand, necessarily like the biggest known name. He just happens to be a guy that managed to win, or actually he didn't technically win it. It was an IBF eliminator that he fought against Walter Castillo, but he wound up being made the mandatory here for Troyanovsky. And I just think it's a solid fight. Troyanovsky is a little bit on the older side. He's 36, so I'm guessing that should he happen to win this fight, he'll be looking to try and get things done ASAP. He'll be trying to look into getting a shot at Crawford or one of the other big names that's at 140 or around there. Potentially some of the other guys moving up. Francis Barthélemy, for instance, I could imagine that type of a fight coming off. And for anybody that's a fan of Barthélemy, even, I think this would be a solid fight to watch if you're able to catch it, whether it's on the stream side or on the replay, internet video side. Because, either one of these guys may be a potential opponent for the likes of Barthélemy or Crawford, or who knows, maybe even a coming Victor Pole on the comeback trail, or some of these other fighters that you see around here, maybe possibly a Mikey Garcia in the future, should he happen to move up to 140, which seems like it may be in the cards. He may be a one-and-done or a two-and-done type of fighter at lightweight and then go up to 140 to try and, maximize his earning potential, as well as his, multi-title winning potential. But I'm pretty much reiterating my point here with saying that I think that Troyanovsky versus Obara is a good, solid fight. I think it's an interesting fight. Two big punchers, two guys that are ostensibly, at the very least, top 10 level fighters at 140 pounds, if not top 5. I'd pretty much rate Troyanovsky maybe like a 2 or a 3, or definitely a top 5 guy at 140. With Obara, I think he's probably more like bottom half of the top 10, like maybe 7 or 8, somewhere in there. That's just off the top of the dome. I'm not necessarily looking at the exact rankings and thinking about, should this guy be rated over this guy and for what reasons and all that stuff. I'm just kind of going freestyling off the top basically. But good fight between these two. It's taking place in Russia, so I'd imagine in a close fight, close rounds, Troyanovsky will likely get the benefit of the doubt, especially because I've seen a couple of his fights that have happened in Russia before, and he has a raucous crowd that's cheering heavy for him over there. So there's definitely a crowd noise factor at play there. But I mean, regardless of that, I mean, I could see this fight going either way. I think this is a 50-50-ish type of fight. I'd probably lean a little bit to Troyanovsky because I think his just overall movements are a little bit smoother, and he keeps his chin just a little bit better tucked, like a little bit better shelled up, as opposed to Obara, who's looking to really like load up a little bit more, leave himself a little bit more defensively liable. But at the same time, I mean, I think if Obara lands, I think he could hurt just about anybody. I mean, the fact that he was able to crack about as hard as Imam against the same level of opponent in Castillo, I think proves something right there. And Troyanovsky, I mean, he's not the slickest guy on the planet. He can be hit, and I think there is potential for him to get cracked, get stunned a little bit here. So. Just of course, and it once again, just an interesting fight, and I'm hoping that you guys check it out. I'll probably do a post-fight review by the time I see it, whether it's on the streaming side or on YouTube, Daily Motion, Vimeo, whatever it happens to be, or Vimeo, I guess it's probably pronounced. But solid fight. I'm looking forward to it. And just wanted to just give it some attention that I think that it definitely needed, especially considering the fact that it's for a world title. It's essentially you could pretty much rank whoever wins this fight as number 2, right behind Crawford. Really, I mean, if anything, the winner of this fight should be a potential next opponent for somebody like a Crawford or a Barthélemy. So that's pretty much all I got to say on this one. Catch you guys on the next one. Peace.